like I don't relate with people as well as I would like to in normal life all the time. So like music is my way of like truly connecting with somebody and like, you know, communicating these really like deeply held ideas without saying anything.
This video is about one of my favorite bands of all time, Tycho, and the creator Scott Hansen, who, you know, is the leading creative energy behind Tycho, both the audio and the visual project. So what's most inspiring about his story for me is he, you know, really came up over many years. He was working on his project for over a decade before he began to be noticed, and he really built his sound and his skills up over that time. And during that time he was working, you know, full-time as a graphic designer and, you know, writing music at night. And I think that's what a lot of musicians, including myself, are doing now. So it's really, you know, his story has been really inspiring for me as somebody who is a part-time creator and musician. So I hope this inspires you as well.
Yeah, the thing is, you know, I spent pretty much all the last 10 years on design, and music was always kind of this back burner thing. And in the years that followed, when I wasn't really working much on music, I always had in my head like this album that I had always wanted to make, and it kind of kept taking shape, and I kept working on my skills and stuff, just trying to get better at recording and producing. And then, you know, about a year ago, I just seemed like it was the time to sit down and really just do it. And it actually took so long, man. Like, you know, I kind of trickled out these singles and just didn't have time to finish the album, and then finally got around to sitting.
How did you work that out?
Yeah, I had a few fortuitous situations. I got like I used to do a lot of t-shirt designs, and a couple companies stole the designs and then subsequently had to pay me a lot more than they would have had to pay me for the licenses. So that was kind of like the nest egg for Tycho. One of those companies just went out of business, and their whole business model was doing this, so it was kind of nice to see that. Me and my wife were walking downtown, and we looked and we saw the empty store, and I was like, yes, there we go.
You're like, sometimes karma acts fast.
But yeah, I burnt through that money, probably 2 years of funding the lost leading tours of Tycho, and then finally, somewhere around 2014, it turned the corner, and it became something that made sense, and it was, you know, it's been my career ever since, and I just feel really fortunate that it's working out. I'm always waiting for it not to be working out. I'm like so pessimistic about it, but it's going well now, so I'm happy.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And I was always a visual artist before I started music. I started music a little bit later. And so I just see a lot of parallels between both of them. And for me, making instrumental music, you know, it can sometimes be a little bit open-ended, and that's kind of the beauty of it, is you assign your own meaning. But I love being able to create the imagery that you see that's connected to it, because that kind of fills in some of the blanks and maybe tells a more complete story, I guess. Didn't really get into electronic till probably college, and I got a drum machine fixed. And then from there I started deciding, okay, maybe I can approach real instruments. But it all started with kind of the electronic side. And that was right when I was getting into listening to electronic music. So I was starting to ask, like, how is this stuff made? So I was just kind of fascinated with the technical side of it, and then slowly moved into the actually creating.
And I think back then, one of the things that really struck me about it was like, how do you get to do this? How do you get to be a musician and a designer? Like, how did you get to wind up going full-time into music as that journey? So I was curious to hear a little bit more about that. Like, how did you juggle both those things?
Yeah, it was definitely juggling for a long time, and it was definitely kind of considering yourself a amateur musician and a professional designer. You know, I was a designer for probably like 10 years professionally while I was trying to get the music thing off the ground. But you know, there was so much overlap between those two, kind of the learning process and the journey to find your way to both of those, that I feel like I kind of was training for each in parallel. But it kind of was pretty natural though, as I started to work with, you know, different recording techniques and stuff, I just started to realize there's these parallels between the way I was working on the design side and the music. And instrumental music in general is all about kind of creating this space for people to, you know, they connect with it and make it their own. It's their own journey. It's a personal journey, because there's not much meaning really built in that's obvious. You know, like it means something to you, but it's not necessarily something that you expect everyone else to interpret that way. It's mostly just, you know, starting with like some simple melody, like either guitar or mini moog mostly, and then just kind of layering out from there. But this time, me and Zach, we just went got out of town, went up to Tahoe, and just kind of like sat around for 2 weeks, just grinding through ideas and stuff. So
as one does when they go to Tahoe, right?
Yeah, it was a pretty good experience. We got a lot done in like a really short amount of time. So yeah, it was we changed it a lot for this record just because it's kind of like more of, I usually put the producer hat on a little bit later in the process, but this time I wasn't.
It feels more like a live jam.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think, there's, I don't know how to explain it. It's like this really deep connection that you have with somebody when you make music together, when you're just in a room and like you're speaking to each other in this other language, and it's really powerful. Like I'm not a very great, I don't consider myself a great communicator, or like I don't relate with people as well as I would like to in normal life all the time. So like music is my way of like truly connecting with somebody and like, communicating these really like deeply held ideas without saying anything.
Sometimes I just do things because it's what people want me to do. Like I'll own that. But but because of that, I am grateful that I have the opportunity to do that, because it also kind of gives me the freedom to do, stuff that I like.
Yeah. Well, plus I feel like, I always wonder what that must be like if you kind of forced into doing certain things, but then at the same time, the engineering aspects of it must be, I don't know, for me that's fulfilling a lot of the time, even if it's something that,
even if it's shit.
Yeah. It's kind of like, well, I got the sound that I wanted, whether or not it's like evoking some emotional response or whatever. It's like there's something there, and the beauties and the kind of detail of it. Yeah. So when I first came here, I moved here in 1995 to go to school. And we were in the computer lab, and we had like access to all these batteries and speakers. So we built this backpack with these big speakers on them. And we'd walk up into the Twin Peaks like hills in the middle of the night, where it was like all foggy and like, it's like a rainforest up there at night. And we'd play like Logical Progression or Blast, whatever, some like trippy drum and bass stuff. And we just like wander around in those woods. And like those are like the most formative experiences of connecting an experience to music, connecting music to like what you were doing. And I always smell, the eucalyptus and like taste have the dew on your skin and all that stuff. Like that will always be this visceral experience that I have when I listen to that music. And that's always what I've tried to do with my work, is like create something that someone can take and attach to an experience and bring back all those senses every time you hear that music, no matter where you are.